A candle flickers in a dark Parisian room. The bow of a violin glides across strings. The sound is haunting, hypnotic, music that feels like it belongs to Mozart. But it isn't. This melody came from a man you've probably never heard of, a man history tried to erase. He was called the Black Mozart. But what if Mozart was actually the imitator? Picture the scene. Paris in the 18th century. Ballrooms overflowing with jewels and powdered wigs. Noblemen gasping as a young black composer takes the stage. Outside those halls, whispers of duels fought with steel. And somewhere in the shadows, manuscripts burning, names vanishing, legacies destroyed. His name? Joseph Boulogne, Chevalier de Saint-Georges, musician, fencer, soldier, a genius unlike any other. Yet today, few even know he existed. So the question is, how could one of Europe's greatest minds be buried in silence? France in the 1700s. Golden chandeliers blaze above marble floors. Silk gowns sweep across ballroom tiles. The air smells of perfume, candle wax, and power. But beneath that glittering surface, a darker truth. The wealth of Paris dripped with blood. Ships sailed from Africa. Human cargo chained in the hull. Sugar plantations in the Caribbean. Whips cracking, lives destroyed, fortunes made. This was the world into which Joseph Boulogne was born. On the island of Guadeloupe, a French colony. His father, a wealthy white planter. His mother, an enslaved African woman. Joseph entered life marked by contradiction, privilege, and chains. To the French elite, a child like him was a scandal. He was not meant to lead, not meant to rise, not meant to be remembered. In 18th century Europe, skin color was a prison. Black children were invisible, or worse, reminders of a society that thrived on slavery, yet loved to speak of liberty. Imagine the silence that surrounded him, the whispers, the closed doors. For a black child, greatness was not destiny, it was impossible. And yet, Europe worshipped art, opera, symphony, dance. The courts crowned their musicians as immortals. But immortality had a rule. It was reserved for white men. And so the question loomed, heavy as the marble palaces of Versailles. What chance did a boy from a Caribbean colony, born of both privilege and bondage, have in a world designed to erase him? The answer would begin with a journey, across an ocean to the glittering, dangerous heart of Paris. Imagine being a child, stepping off a ship into the heart of Paris. Your skin announces you before your voice ever can. Eyes follow you, some filled with curiosity, most filled with judgment. This was Joseph Boulogne's arrival in France, a boy from a Caribbean colony, half enslaved, half privileged, and yet never fully accepted. Paris whispered behind his back, a mulatto, an outsider. Every step he took reminded him, this city was not built for boys like him. But Joseph refused to bend. If the world would not open its doors, he would kick them open. He trained his body. Fencing halls echoed with the clash of steel. Joseph was fast, too fast. His strikes cut through opponents like lightning. He didn't just fight, he danced with the blade. Each duel became a performance. Each victory a message, you will not define me. Soon crowds gathered just to watch him fight. Parisian nobles gasped as challenger after challenger fell. The legend grew. The boy from Guadeloupe was unbeatable. But fencing was only half his story. When the sword was sheathed, another weapon waited: the violin. He played with the same precision, the same grace. Each note carried both elegance and defiance. To his teachers, it was undeniable. They whispered among themselves, "He may be the greatest we've ever seen." A boy the world tried to break had turned himself into a prodigy. But swords and whispers were only preludes. Because soon Joseph Boulogne would not be battling opponents in dusty fencing halls. He would be battling centuries of prejudice on the grandest stage of all, the stage of music. And the question was, how would Paris react when this prodigy stepped into the spotlight with a violin, not a sword? The glow of candlelit chandeliers, the finest silks, the richest perfumes, Paris at its peak of elegance. And at the center of it all, a black man with a violin. Joseph Boulogne, not just a musician, now the conductor of Paris's top orchestra, the Les Concerts des Amateurs, an ensemble so precise, so brilliant, that critics claimed it rivaled even the King's Own. Aristocrats filled the halls, noblemen leaned forward in awe, women swooned at every note, and Joseph, once a boy marked as an outsider, commanded the stage like royalty. But behind the applause, the whispers never stopped. A man like him conducting our music? A mulatto leading the finest orchestra in France? And when word spread that Joseph Boulogne might be chosen to direct the Paris Opera, the whispers became something darker. Petitions circulated, signed by wealthy patrons, powerful names. They declared, in ink and venom, no opera should be led by a man of color. It wasn't his talent they doubted, it was his skin. Imagine the sting, a genius celebrated on stage, yet denied the crown he deserved. Doors slammed shut, opportunities stolen, all because of prejudice. But Joseph did not fall silent. He continued to compose, to perform, to defy. And just as he stood at the height of both glory and rejection, a new figure stepped onto the Parisian stage, a young composer, hungry, brilliant, ambitious enough to steal the spotlight. His name was Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Paris, 1778. The city alive with music. Every salon, every ballroom. A stage where reputations were forged or destroyed. Into this glittering world walks a new arrival. Young, brilliant, hungry, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Paris, 1778. The city alive with music. Every salon, every ballroom. A stage where reputations were forged or destroyed. Into this glittering world walks a new arrival. Young, brilliant, hungry, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. But before Paris adored him, before his genius was carved into marble and memory, he crossed paths with someone else. Someone already commanding the stage. Joseph Boulogne, the Chevalier de Saint-Georges. They moved in the same circles, played in the same halls, and soon their music began to echo one another. themes, phrases, rhythms, too close to be coincidence. Was Mozart inspired, or did he borrow from a man the world was not ready to honor? Because here is the tragedy. History remembers one name, the other was buried in silence. Saint-Georges poured his brilliance onto the page, but many of his compositions were lost, burned, forgotten. Meanwhile, Mozart's name rose higher and higher, immortalized. And still the question lingers, sharp as a blade. Was this rivalry born of respect, of theft, or simply survival in a world that could crown only one genius, and never a black one? As the music swelled in Paris, so did unrest. Beyond the gilded concert halls, a storm was gathering. Whispers of revolution, of guillotines, of a France on the brink of fire. And in that chaos, Saint-Georges would face a battle greater than any duel, greater than any concert. The battle for his very place in history. Paris, July 14th, 1789. The crowd roars. The Bastille falls. The old world crumbles in smoke and fire. For Joseph Boulogne, the Chevalier de Saint-Georges, this was no longer just about music. It was about survival. It was about freedom. He did not stand aside. He did not retreat into concert halls while France tore itself apart. He stepped forward, sword in hand. Saint-Georges commanded the Légion Saint-Georges, a regiment of black and mixed-race soldiers. Men who had never been allowed to lead now carried muskets in defense of liberty. The son of an enslaved woman now gave orders to free men. Imagine the weight of that moment. A violinist, a composer, now a soldier, leading men into war. But war does not applaud genius, it devours it. As France bled, so too did his music. Manuscripts lost, performances silenced, notes scattered like ashes in the chaos of revolution. Saint-Georges had conquered the stage. He had conquered the battlefield. But history is not conquered so easily. Censors erased his work. Racism buried his name. And when the guns fell silent, so too did his legacy. The applause he once knew, the thunder of audiences in Paris, was gone, replaced by silence. And that silence, after victory, was louder than any ovation. So the question remains. He could duel, he could compose, he could command. But could Joseph Boulogne, Chevalier de Saint-Georges, ever conquer history? The final years of a man once called extraordinary. Paris has changed. The revolution is over. New rulers rise, old ones fall. And in the quiet corners of the city, Joseph Boulogne fades. No roaring crowds, no thunder of applause, no duels to prove his strength, just silence. When he dies in 1799, there are no monuments, no grand tributes, only a whisper of the genius he once was. His manuscripts? Scattered, destroyed, forgotten. Entire symphonies lost to dust. The notes that once made Paris tremble, gone. Meanwhile, another name soars. Mozart, immortalized. His genius carved into the memory of the world. And Joseph? The world pretended he never existed. Because history is not just written, it is edited. Edited by those who choose who to remember and who to erase. Saint George, the son of an enslaved woman, the swordsman who could not be defeated, the composer who filled halls with wonder, the soldier who led men into revolution. He was centuries ahead of his time, and yet he was buried beneath it. But here is the question: is it too late to hear his voice again? Imagine a stage today, not in Paris, not in Versailles, but here, now. A violin rises, the bow touches strings, and suddenly Joseph Boulogn's music breathes again. Notes that once shook gilded halls, notes nearly silenced by prejudice and time. They rise alive in the hands of new musicians, black, white, young, old, across continents. Every performance today is more than music. It's rebellion. Rebellion against the silence that tried to erase him. Rebellion against the lie that genius has a single color. Because every melody of Saint George whispers the truth. Talent cannot be changed. Art cannot be buried. And legacy, though delayed, can rise again. If his music inspired Mozart, if it lit fire in Europe's greatest halls, then imagine what it can do for us now. So don't let Joseph Boulogn fade a second time. Share his story, play his music, keep his genius alive. Because the past tried to erase him, but the future, that's in our hands.